Everyone thinks Microsoft won the AI war, but they may have just lost it overnight. Because Sam Altman just made a $50 billion move with Amazon to stab Microsoft in the back. And almost no one noticed. On the surface, it looks like another massive AI deal, but hidden inside it is a shift that sidelines Microsoft and removes the one clause that actually kept control in check. And that changes everything. Because this isn't just about building powerful AI anymore, it's about who owns it, who controls it, and who's willing to burn billions to get there. By the time most people realize what just happened, the balance of power may already be gone. Chapter 1. The $50 billion Betrayal. To the public, OpenAI looks like one of the biggest success stories of the modern era, a Silicon Valley startup that turned into a household name almost overnight. It built tools used by millions, pushed AI further than anyone expected, and wrapped it all up in a mission to benefit humanity. That was the illusion. In reality, OpenAI is a mess that's bleeding cash. In 2024, its projected revenue was approximately $3.7 billion. Its losses? $5 billion. That's like buying a mid-sized airline and setting the whole thing on fire every 12 months just to keep the servers running. That's not a sustainable or successful business model. That's not a sign of a healthy, stable company, and it wasn't a one-time thing. It was a trend. In the first half of 2025, figures revealed that OpenAI was losing extraordinary amounts of money, generating around $4.3 billion in revenue while recording losses of up to $13 billion. Some estimates suggest the company's total losses could exceed $140 billion between 2024 and 2029 alone. But that is not that surprising. Training frontier AI models isn't cheap. Neither are the salaries of leading researchers and computer scientists, or the construction and operating costs of data centers. OpenAI is burning through money at breakneck speed. Its entire business model is founded on the idea of convincing investors that someday, somehow, all of this loss will be worth it. Microsoft bought into that idea. It poured billions into OpenAI and secured what seemed like an exclusive hold over the most valuable AI startup on the planet. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella even said that it wouldn't matter if OpenAI disappeared tomorrow. We have the data, IP rights, and the capability. Nadella thought that for all intents and purposes, he owned OpenAI. He was wrong. In February 2026, Sam Altman orchestrated an enormous $50 billion infrastructure deal with Amazon. In doing so, he effectively ended Microsoft's exclusive cloud rights. That wasn't supposed to happen. Microsoft was supposed to be the only serious player in the game. Microsoft Azure was meant to be the default home for OpenAI's technology. Amazon was the rival, the company that you compete against, not partner with. This wasn't a new vendor agreement or just some sort of multi-partner strategy. It was OpenAI blatantly betraying the tech giant that helped build it. The question is why? Why would Altman risk the wrath of Microsoft? Why jeopardize what seemed to be the most powerful relationship in the industry? Because the Amazon deal wasn't just about getting more servers or resources. It was a weapon built for one mission: to defeat a more powerful enemy, the United States government. Chapter 2. The FTC's Trap. For years, it looked like compute was going to be the biggest challenge OpenAI would ever face. But the funding from Microsoft introduced OpenAI to something else: antitrust. To observers and analysts, including those in government authorities, such as the Federal Trade Commission, this didn't look like one company simply supporting another. It looked like a merger. Naturally, Microsoft and OpenAI didn't label it that way, but the facts were clear to see. Microsoft had poured in billions and secured exclusive rights to its Azure ecosystem. OpenAI technology was also becoming increasingly integrated into Microsoft's most used systems and applications, from Windows to Copilot, Office, GitHub, and beyond. OpenAI, meanwhile, was looking less like an independent organization and more like a subsidiary, just with its own separate branding. The FTC noticed. So did other tech brands. Google even called on the government to investigate and break up the deal. Critics and regulators argued that Microsoft's massive investment and exclusive cloud control over OpenAI's technology gave the company too much influence. It hadn't just invested in an up-and-coming company, it had bought the future. So the FTC started investigating the two companies. If it could prove that they had effectively entered a de facto merger, or that Microsoft had acquired an unfair monopoly over the AI industry, it could force the pair to split. Microsoft would be able to survive that. OpenAI might not. It couldn't afford the risk, and it had to find some way to wriggle out of its predicament. Enter the Amazon deal. By pivoting to Amazon Web Services, or AWS, OpenAI gave itself a multi-billion-dollar legal shield. Because now, if the FTC's investigators question the company's allegiances or argue it's too friendly with Microsoft, OpenAI's lawyers can simply say, "How can we possibly be a subsidiary of Microsoft if we just signed a $50 billion contract with one of their biggest rivals?" It was the perfect piece of legal theater at just the right time. Because antitrust cases are built on dependency. Regulators are very wary of any company that appears to be entirely or exclusively dependent on another for its survival. But by inking an agreement with another tech giant, OpenAI proved its independence. Problem solved. Or at least that's how it seemed. In reality, there was much more to this story than meets the eye. Escaping the FTC was only a convenient and timely byproduct of a deeper and darker machination. The real reason OpenAI needed leverage over Microsoft was hidden inside a bizarre legal contract signed years before, a contract that contained a ticking time bomb. Chapter 3: The AGI Poison Pill. For years, OpenAI told the world that it is working toward AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. Sometimes known as the God model, this is said to be the point at which AI effectively reaches and then surpasses human-level intelligence. According to the experts, AGI will be able to think, reason, and adapt just like a real person. It'll solve problems and switch from task to task rather than being pre-programmed with just one specific function or avenue of activity in mind. In effect, this was OpenAI's justification for everything. All the funding, all the hype, all the resources, it was all said to be in service of the AGI experiment. And for OpenAI, it was the perfect panacea. All they had to do was convince people to trust them, ignore the obvious problems, hand over their money, and then believe that someday they'd build something that would change the world. There was just one little problem. One buried deep in the contracts tying OpenAI and Microsoft. It was known as the AGI trigger. Basically, Microsoft was granted a seemingly perpetual license to OpenAI's intellectual property. But that perpetual license had a strict limit. As soon as OpenAI achieved artificial general intelligence, the new AGI model would be entirely excluded from the deal, and Microsoft would effectively lose its grip on the future of AI. At that stage, all commercial rights to the AGI would remain exclusively with OpenAI. It's a paradox, a snake eating its own tail. Microsoft was pouring billions into a company whose sole stated mission was build AGI. But as soon as that mission was achieved, Microsoft would lose all of its power and benefits. It was funding its own demise. But Microsoft's executives aren't idiots. They knew the terms of the deal when they signed it. They knew exactly how to work around them. All they had to do was ensure that OpenAI failed at its stated mission. They wanted the AI to be powerful, but never powerful enough to reach AGI. That's where things get complicated. Because AGI isn't a clear finish line, no one can agree what it actually means. So even if OpenAI pushed its systems further and further, Microsoft could always argue it still wasn't AGI. Sam Altman knew this. He knew that as long as the AGI trigger clause existed, Microsoft would never truly be an all-in partner. It would always have leverage, always have limits, always have a way to control OpenAI from the inside. So he had to change the play. With the $50 billion Amazon deal as its loaded gun, OpenAI forced Microsoft back to the table, not just to negotiate, but to completely rewrite the rules of the AI war. Chapter 4: The April 2026 Reset. In April 2026, the balance of power shifted. It wasn't a simple partnership update. OpenAI didn't want to iron out just a few issues or make a couple of amendments to its Microsoft deal. It wanted to demolish it and then rebuild it exactly as it saw fit. On the surface, the two companies saved face, announcing a simplified agreement and next phase for their partnership. But the terms of that agreement painted the real picture. Microsoft was still described as OpenAI's primary cloud partner, but the very next sentence added that OpenAI was now free to serve products across any other cloud provider it wanted. Azure's exclusivity was gone. Microsoft's once perpetual license to OpenAI's intellectual property was also amended and given a fixed end date of 2032. The tech giant no longer had privileged ownership of the future of AI. Revenue sharing was officially given a cap and a deadline of 2030 as well. Most importantly, the AGI trigger was gone. It wasn't redefined, clarified, or amended. It was deleted. That vague, hard-to-define clause that hung over OpenAI like a sword of Damocles for years was gone. It was replaced with something far simpler and far more controlled: a calendar with dates, deadlines, and caps. In other words, a standard corporate agreement. Microsoft's stake was also formalized at approximately 27% of the company. That is still a sizable amount, enough for Microsoft to hold some level of influence over the company's activities, but nowhere near enough for complete control. It looked like a big victory for OpenAI. The company had won its independence, decoupling its finances from the mythical AGI milestone. It was no longer a research lab trying to trigger a clause in a contract to win its freedom, but a corporation with a clear runway ahead. But there was a catch, a big one. To pull off this extraordinary corporate coup, Altman had to permanently destroy the very foundation that OpenAI was built upon: its non-profit structure. Chapter 5: The Death of the Non-Profit. OpenAI's non-profit nature was the one thing that separated it from every other Silicon Valley machine. This wasn't just another power to the benefit of humanity, a non-profit lab working with care and consideration towards something that was supposed to bring great benefits to all. This wasn't Google, it wasn't Meta, it wasn't worried about pleasing shareholders, because there were no shareholders. But that idealistic attitude couldn't last. Slowly and surely, the cracks in the mask began to appear. In late 2025, the facade was ripped away entirely. OpenAI shifted from a non-profit to a public benefit corporation. At a glance, that still sounds like a righteous cause, a compromise between the original mission and a need to make money. PBCs are supposed to strike a balance between pursuing profit while remaining committed to creating a positive impact on society, the community, or the environment. In reality, PBCs still serve their investors almost as much as any other for-profit entity. Just as Altman would go on to smash and then rebuild his deal with Microsoft, he also destroyed what OpenAI once was, reconstructing it as something completely different. The groundwork was laid back in 2023. The organization's original nonprofit board, the one that briefly fired Altman, was removed and replaced by Silicon Valley insiders and former Treasury officials. The safety guardrails that had once been so critical to the organization's overall mission were dismantled. The systems that had kept OpenAI's progress in line with its focus on helping humanity were gone. In their place were product safety teams more concerned with ensuring that their AI doesn't say anything that might offend a big B2B client than actually harm real people. The cogs inside the OpenAI machine were replaced piece by piece until something fundamentally changed. What began as a research-driven system started to look like something else entirely, a profit engine, one that was preparing for a massive IPO, and was increasingly insulated from any meaningful ethical oversight. Behind closed doors, Altman and OpenAI's research leads had realized a terrifying technical truth. They weren't moving toward AGI as they originally expected. They were moving towards a brick wall. Chapter 6: The Scaling Wall. For years, the AI industry has relied on an unwavering belief in a premise known as scaling laws. If you add more data and more compute, your AI models will become exponentially smarter. It's all a question of resources. Provide more resources and you get a better product. All companies like OpenAI had to do was keep on building bigger and better data centers. They had to invest in more powerful chips and processors. Then they could sit back and watch as their AI followed the linear path to godlike intelligence. Sounds pretty straightforward, and the scaling laws worked for a while. Each new generation of AI technology felt like a big leap forward. GPT-2 was impressive. GPT-3, next level. GPT-4 exceeded expectations. So naturally, GPT-5, codenamed Orion, was expected to be a game changer, maybe even the final step toward AGI. Or not. Internal reports suggest that the scaling laws are stalling. Instead of providing some sort of quantum intelligence leap, GPT-5 has hit diminishing returns. It's still getting smaller, but at a slower rate than ever before. All of a sudden, this god model that seemed right around the corner is now a speck on the horizon. This isn't just a hurdle, it's a catastrophe. The scaling wall changes everything. It's no longer a situation where companies can just pour in money and watch their AI become twice as intelligent overnight. Now they're spending billions for only incremental improvements. And that is bad business. Because let's not forget about the burn rate. OpenAI is nowhere close to making a profit. It loses billions each year, but it was always able to justify that with the claim that AGI would eventually arrive and fix everything. The company's entire financial structure and investment incentives were reliant on that premise. That's why removing the AGI trigger clause from the Microsoft contract mattered so much. It wasn't just a legal trick, it was a quiet admission that AGI is a mirage. And if AGI is a mirage, OpenAI is just another software company, and one that is failing to provide returns and plateauing fast. So how does a company like that justify a $5 billion burn rate to its next investors? It stops selling AGI and starts selling AI Slop instead. Chapter 7. The SaaS Pivot. Selling AI Slop. Meet the new OpenAI. It's no longer a valiant nonprofit pursuing civilization-changing superintelligence, but a sales force for AI business. It's slowly but surely pivoting away from its original mission and towards something much more mundane: enterprise software and corporate workflow automation. And it's happening right before our eyes. Rather than focusing its efforts exclusively on the next evolution of GPT technology, OpenAI is prioritizing alternative projects like agentic middleware and reasoning models like O1 or Strawberry. It's no longer charting a course toward human enlightenment, but making life easier for middle management. The focus has shifted to producing tools built for middle management, routing leads, generating marketing copy, handling support tickets. OpenAI hopes that this shift will bring in the money it needs to satisfy its investors. But there is a massive problem with that plan. The numbers don't add up. Traditional SaaS, or software as a service companies like Salesforce and Adobe, operate on incredible margins, often exceeding 70%. They make a product and they basically sell it forever, bringing in more and more profit with every new customer. That's why investors love SaaS. It is a gold mine. But OpenAI's attempts to enter this industry are not working, because advanced reasoning models cost so much more to run than conventional software. O1, for example, costs around $15 for 1 million input tokens. That might not sound like much at first glance, but in enterprise terms, it is a massive financial burden. Big businesses with hundreds or even thousands of employees can chew through millions upon millions of tokens in a single day. Suddenly, a smart assistant is not a cost-effective component of the tech stack, but a very expensive capital drain. Traditional SaaS doesn't work this way. Microsoft doesn't bill businesses every time they open a new spreadsheet on Excel. CRMs don't suddenly become twice as expensive just because employees clicked a few buttons and generated some reports. AI works differently. The more you use it, the more expensive it gets. OpenAI is desperately trying to force businesses to integrate overpriced, automated AI slop software into their corporate workflows to fix its own broken economics. It is trying to sell digital gold for the price of lead, hoping to convince people its money-guzzling AI agent isn't just really expensive software. But to make its margins work, it needs to dramatically decrease its own operating costs. It needs cheaper compute, which brings us back to the $50 billion Amazon Trojan horse. Chapter 8. Amazon's Trojan horse. The deal with Amazon wasn't about escaping the FTC's investigations or breaking free of Microsoft's shackles. It was about hardware. Part of the $50 billion commitment that Amazon made to OpenAI includes a multi-year agreement for the AI firm to use AWS's Trainium chips. Prior to this, OpenAI was a hostage to NVIDIA. It was forced to use NVIDIA's H100 GPUs. It's the hardware that everyone in the AI industry wants and needs, the chips that form the beating hearts of AI data centers. These GPUs have proven highly effective in training and improving AI. They're also expensive. Each one can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and that's before the added expense of building the rest of the server around it and actually running the whole thing. Large training clusters come with billion-dollar price tags. OpenAI has paid an H100 tax on every single prompt it processes for years, with incalculable amounts of money funneled away into the accounts of NVIDIA and Microsoft. The Amazon deal gives OpenAI an off-ramp. Trainium chips aren't necessarily better than NVIDIA's H100s, but they do have the potential to be much cheaper, up to 50% cheaper according to early estimates. They're also said to consume 40% less energy. By switching to Amazon's own custom silicon, OpenAI hopes it'll be able to make some significant reductions to the cost of its tokens. Cheaper tokens should make OpenAI's AI slop easier to digest for its big business customers. They might even give the company a slim chance of turning a profit before the 2030 revenue cap hits. In the name of saving humanity and building a tech utopia, OpenAI took a very different path. building software on proprietary Amazon chips, running inside Amazon data centers, selling AI agents to Fortune 500 companies. This is not what the company's founders envisioned all those years ago. This is not a beacon of open source enlightenment. It's just a cog in the AWS machine. So where do we go from here? Chapter 9: The Great AI Realignment. The hardware war is over. Unfortunately, humanity didn't win. Instead, the victors are the corporate behemoths that own the silicon. These companies with the money and power to do whatever they want and always get away with it. OpenAI sold the world a dream of godlike AI that would cure cancer, solve the climate crisis, and bring about a new world where everyone would be happier, freer, and more fulfilled. That utopian dream is dead, replaced by a dystopian corporate reality. Microsoft, Amazon, and OpenAI aren't laying the foundations for a more prosperous and creative age of human advancement. They're building their own locked down and ludicrously expensive B2B monopoly. The open marriage that now exists between those tech giants all but guarantees that the future of the internet will be flooded with corporate AI slop. Automated emails, synthetic reports, and agentic workflows that don't actually provide real benefits to real people. They just streamline the capitalist machine while eroding the value of human thought and creativity. Sam Altman didn't escape from Microsoft to bring about a better world. He broke free so that when the trillion-dollar IPO arrives, he and his shareholders will make as much money as possible. This is the grim reality of AI today. We're not getting AGI. We're not going to see some digital god that solves the world's ills and makes us all happier and healthier. We're getting an inescapable automated corporate bureaucracy instead. And once you follow that logic all the way through, one question becomes unavoidable. What happens when the money stops making sense? Find out in $115 billion burn rate. The AI bubble just popped. Or watch this instead.